Welcome back. The DNC kicked off in Milwaukee yesterday. Here to talk about that and the Democrats' hopes for this November is Ben Wikler, chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So great to be with you.
Great. Well, a recent morning consult poll is in favor of you guys. It has Biden up by 6 points. But I will say the Democrats led in every Wisconsin poll leading up to the 2016 election. So how do you hope to avoid that this time around?
It's clear that the public in Wisconsin is rejecting the disastrous failure of Donald Trump and Mike Pence. What we see across the state, far more than in 2016, is a level of grassroots energy to make sure that we end this disastrous series of calamities that we are watching unfold as Trump fails to respond to the coronavirus pandemic and thus fails to address the economic collapse and the crisis for students who want to go back to school safely. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are tested leaders. They know how to work out of a crisis and get us back on steady footing. And that's what Wisconsin wants, and that's what the country wants. That's why we are organizing day and night with a huge amount of focus and investment from the Biden campaign that frankly wasn't there in 2016 because people didn't realize then how close our state could be.
Got it. Well, if Joe Biden wins this election, he will be the oldest president ever sworn into office at 78. So do you think he's ready to steer this country through a pandemic?
Joe Biden is a tested, proven, experienced leader. He's met the test of pandemics because he actually helped get several of them under control and helped write a playbook that was handed to the Trump administration. The Trump administration, President Trump, was tested and he failed the test. He has been an abject failure in responding to this crisis. He didn't create coronavirus, but it doesn't have to be this bad. So I think Wisconsin and America, we're ready for change, for someone who actually knows what they're doing in the midst of this massive pandemic and an economic collapse, just the way that Joe Biden helped to steer us out of the economic collapse after the end of the Bush administration.
So give me that clear vision for a coronavirus response. What would a Joe Biden coronavirus response look like? How would it be different than our current president's?
The number one core principle is that Joe Biden won't wish this away. He won't say it'll be like a miracle. He will listen to scientists and public health experts about how you bring this under control. And instead of promoting conspiracy theories or quack medicines, he's actually going to do the things they say we need to do, like massive amounts of testing, tracing for how people caught the virus, social distancing, making sure there's enough protective equipment for healthcare workers. You know, hundreds of healthcare workers have died in trying to control the coronavirus pandemic, often because the Trump administration utterly mismanaged the process of making sure they had the protection that everyone deserves. That will end under a Biden administration. And that is the precondition for a country where we can control this, as they've done just north of here in Canada to a much greater extent, so kids can go back to school, businesses can reopen, and we can start to build back better.
Well, you invoked the economy earlier, Ben, and our economy was generally doing well before the pandemic hit. And even now, people's 401ks are staying pretty steady. So why is Joe Biden, rather than Donald Trump, the best option for economy?
We have double-digit % unemployment in Wisconsin at this very moment. What we saw was a president who was inheriting the longest economic boom in American history from the Obama-Biden administration. And then as this pandemic hit, after he was warned repeatedly and ignored the warnings, he just drove it over a cliff. That is not the way that you manage and support economic activity in our country. This is a president who has failed to push Republicans to agree on extending unemployment benefits for a meaningful period of time. The Democrats and Joe Biden specifically knows that you have to give people a hand when they fall down so they can stand on their own 2 feet. Biden believes as deeply as anyone in this country in rewarding hard work and making sure that people have the tools they need to be able to take their best shot at life. That's what America's hungry for. And for folks that have had to shutter their businesses, folks who've been laid off, who are now relying on those unemployment insurance checks, we need a president who will get this pandemic under control so we can actually have an economy that works for people.
Let's talk about Joe Biden's running mate right now. Your counterpart, Andrew Hitt from the Republican Party of Wisconsin, called Kamala Harris the most liberal member of the Senate. So I'm curious, how would you describe Harris's record? What does she bring to the table?
Kamala Harris is a vice presidential candidate who is ready to lead on day one. She's gone after big banks where Donald Trump has just cozied up to them. She has fought against big oil where Donald Trump has tried to open the spigots and worked hand in glove with the dictators in Saudi Arabia. Kamala Harris is ready to be a partner to Joe Biden to turn this ship around after Donald Trump seems to ram it into the iceberg over and over and over. That's why she's so popular in Wisconsin and across the country. And I'm really proud of her Wisconsin roots. She lived in Madison for a bit when she was a kid. I think she's carried that with her because you can see that in the common sense values that she brings to her work, to her life, and to her public service.
Well, I learned something. I didn't know that she lived in Madison for a little bit, so that's really neat to hear. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Wikler, for joining us today. I know you're very busy, so I'll let you get back to whatever you're doing.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ben. All right, thanks to Mr. Wikler and Mr. Hitt. Jeff and I will see you right after these messages.